The rain came down gently that evening, painting the streets of Seattle in quiet silver. Inside a cozy house on Maplewood Lane, Emma sat near the fireplace, staring at the flickering light as if it could warm the loneliness she felt. The house was peaceful, too peaceful. The kind of silence that comes not from comfort, but from distance. She used to love these rainy nights. She and her husband Daniel would sit together, wrapped in a blanket, talking about everything, their dreams, their plans, their little jokes that only they understood. But that was years ago, somewhere between his long work hours and her quiet acceptance. Their laughter had faded into routine. Emma was a gentle soul, thoughtful and kind, but lately she felt invisible. Daniel was a good man, hardworking, responsible, the kind who never forgot to pay the bills or lock the door, but he had forgotten the small things that once mattered most. The conversations, the shared glances, the soft words before sleep. That evening, she heard the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. She straightened the cushion beside her and brushed a hand through her hair, a small, automatic gesture of hope. Maybe tonight they would talk. Maybe things would feel normal again. The door opened and Daniel stepped in, shaking the rain from his coat. His face carried a tired smile. "You won't believe who I ran into today," he said, setting down his briefcase. "Noah. Remember Noah Parker? From college." The name hit her like a gentle wind from the past. She hadn't heard it in years. Noah had been one of Daniel's closest friends back then, easygoing, kind, the kind of person everyone liked. But he was more than just a friend to her. Back in those days, before she met Daniel, Noah was the first person who really noticed her art, her dreams, her way of seeing the world. He never flirted or crossed lines, but there had been a quiet understanding between them. A warmth that stayed even after they drifted apart. Emma tried to sound casual. "Of course. How is he?" "He's good," Daniel said with a grin. "He's in town for a few days. I invited him to dinner tomorrow. Hope that's okay?" She hesitated only for a second, then nodded. "That's fine. It'll be nice to catch up." Daniel didn't notice the small tremor in her voice. He kissed her cheek, a polite, habitual kiss, and went upstairs to change. Emma stayed still for a moment, staring at the fire. The warmth touched her skin, but not her heart. That night, she couldn't sleep. Memories drifted through her mind like echoes, laughter by the lake. Late-night conversations about art and life, the way Noah used to listen without interrupting. He had always been good at that, listening. She wasn't sure what she felt about seeing him again. It wasn't excitement, not exactly. It was something softer, deeper, a quiet curiosity about who he had become, and who she still was. The next day moved quickly. She cleaned the house not because it needed it, but because she needed to feel useful. She cooked Daniel's favorite meal, arranged flowers in a vase, and even found a soft blue dress she hadn't worn in years. It wasn't for Noah, she told herself. It was just for dinner by 7. The doorbell rang. Daniel opened it with a cheerful shout, and there he was, Noah, older, broader-shouldered, with a few lines around his eyes, but the same warm smile she remembered. His presence filled the doorway like sunlight after days of rain. "Emma," he said, his voice carrying that familiar calm, "you haven't changed a bit." She laughed softly. "You definitely have," she replied, noticing the silver in his hair, but in a good way. The air between them was polite but charged with memories. Daniel, oblivious, led him inside, chatting about old college stories. They sat down for dinner, and the room came alive with laughter. Daniel told stories about their wild college years, and Emma listened, smiling, though her attention often wandered to Noah's quiet glances, the kind that said he noticed things no one else did when Daniel got up to answer a work call. The noise of the house faded. Only the rain and the ticking clock remained. "It's really good to see you," Noah said, his tone low and genuine. "You too," Emma replied. "It's been a long time." He looked around the room, then back at her. "You still paint?" The question made her heart tighten. "Not really," she admitted. "I stopped years ago. Life got busy." "That's a shame," he said softly. "You used to have this light when you talked about your work. You saw beauty in everything. She smiled faintly. Maybe I lost that light somewhere along the way. For a moment, silence hung between them. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with understanding. He didn't try to fill it with words. He simply looked at her the way people do when they see something fragile and real. Then Daniel returned, full of energy, and the moment passed. They talked for another hour, laughing about the past, sharing small memories that felt safe. But under it all, Emma felt something shift. Not attraction, but awareness. The reminder of what it felt like to be noticed, to be understood without having to explain herself. When Noah finally stood to leave, the rain had eased into a soft mist. He put on his coat and turned to her. "Thank you for dinner. You've built a beautiful life here." She smiled, though she wasn't sure if it was true. "Thank you for coming." Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. "We'll do that lake trip tomorrow, like the old days. Emma, you'll come too, right?" Her heart hesitated, but her lips said, "Of course." After Noah left, Emma stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the road. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her lightly. "He's still the same guy," he said. "It'll be fun tomorrow." She nodded, but her mind was far away. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about the future or the chores or the plans that never happened. She was thinking about the version of herself that used to dream the girl who painted sunsets and believed in possibilities. The rain stopped. The silence returned. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like the start of something she couldn't name. Not love, not longing, but awakening that night. As she lay beside her sleeping husband, Emma stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The sound of the rain faded into the distance, and in her heart a question began to bloom. What if tomorrow changes everything? The next evening arrived faster than Emma expected. The sky outside glowed a soft gold before fading into the deep blue of twilight. The table was set perfectly, candles flickering, silverware shining, a warm scent of roasted herbs filling the air. She wasn't sure why she cared so much about every little detail, but she did. Maybe it was because Noah was coming again. Or maybe because she wanted things to feel alive. Just for one night, Daniel was in his usual rush, checking his phone, adjusting his tie even though they weren't going anywhere. He looked up and smiled at her. "You look beautiful tonight, Em." It was quick and casual, but it still made her heart soften a little. He hadn't said that in weeks. Then the doorbell rang. Daniel opened it before she could take a breath. Noah stood there again, holding a small box of chocolates. "Thought I'd bring something sweet," he said, his smile warm and easy. Emma felt her chest tighten, not from nerves, but from a sudden flood of old memories. He looked comfortable in their home, like he belonged. And that thought both comforted and unsettled her. Dinner started light and cheerful. Daniel did most of the talking, filling the room with stories from college, how he and Noah once drove 3 hours just to catch a sunrise at the coast. How they almost got lost on a hiking trail. Emma laughed genuinely at times, but her mind wandered. She caught herself glancing at Noah more than once, noticing how calm he was. There was something grounding about him. He listened more than he spoke, his eyes kind and steady. When the food was served, Noah looked at her plate and said, "You always used to love cooking, didn't you? You made that lemon pasta once in college." Daniel wouldn't stop talking about it. Emma smiled, a small spark of pride lighting inside her. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things," he said quietly. "You always put your heart into whatever you did." Daniel laughed, not catching the deeper tone. "That's true. She's stubborn that way. Even when she's wrong, she paints it as right." The joke was harmless, but it stung a little. Emma just smiled, pretending it didn't matter. No one noticed the quick drop in her expression, the way her eyes lowered. He didn't interrupt or defend her, he just looked at her with quiet understanding. Later, when Daniel excused himself to take a work call, the sound of his voice faded down the hall. Suddenly, the room felt softer, the air heavier with silence. The only sounds were the gentle rain against the windows and the faint crackle of the candles. Noah leaned back slightly. "You okay?" he asked, his tone low and sincere. Emma gave a small laugh, though it sounded hollow even to her. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? He didn't smile. You just look tired? Like you've been holding your breath for a long time. Her throat tightened. Maybe I have, she whispered. Sometimes I feel like I've forgotten how to breathe freely. He looked at her for a long second. There was no pity in his eyes, only concern. You used to talk about colors, he said softly. You said every person has a color that matches their soul. What color are you now? She blinked, surprised he remembered. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe gray. Noah shook his head gently. No, you're not gray, Emma. You're just hiding your colors. They're still there. For a moment, neither spoke. There was nothing romantic in that silence, only a deep human connection. She hadn't realized how much she missed being understood without needing to explain herself. Daniel returned, cheerful and unaware of the quiet shift that had happened. Crisis averted, he said, placing his phone on the table. Work drama never ends. Emma smiled faintly, slipping back into her usual calm self. Noah helped clear the dishes, insisting on washing while she dried. Their hands brushed once, a small accidental touch, but it sent a strange warmth through her. She didn't pull away immediately. When the kitchen was clean, Daniel brought out coffee. We should go to the lake tomorrow, he said. Just like old times. Noah, you still love the outdoors, right? Always, Noah replied, smiling. It'd be great to get some fresh air. Daniel turned to Emma. You'll come too, right? You need a break. She hesitated. I don't know. I have a few errands. No, Daniel interrupted. You've been stuck in this house too long. Come with us. It'll be fun. She forced a smile. Okay, the lake it is. When Noah left later that night, Emma walked him to the door. The rain had turned into a misty drizzle. Thanks for dinner, he said. You make this place feel warm. She looked down, unsure what to say. I'm glad you came. Daniel really missed you. He smiled faintly. And you? The question caught her off guard. What about me? Did you miss me? He asked simply, no teasing in his tone. Emma hesitated. The easy answer would have been a polite smile and a yes. But the truth sat heavier. I didn't realize I did, she said softly. Until now. He nodded slowly, his eyes steady. Sometimes we don't realize what we've lost until it's right in front of us again. Daniel's voice called from the living room, breaking the quiet. Emma, come here. You've got to see this old photo I found. She took a small step back, her voice low. Good night, Noah, smiled. Good night, Emma. As he left, she closed the door gently, her hand resting on the cool wood for a moment longer than necessary. She could still feel the calm he brought, like the echo of a song she hadn't heard in years. When she turned, Daniel was holding an old photo of the three of them in college, smiling, carefree, untouched by time. He grinned. We were so young back then, huh? Emma smiled, but her heart ached a little. Yes, she whispered. We were. That night when she lay in bed, she could still hear the rain, still see the reflection of candlelight in Noah's eyes. There was no guilt, no shame, only a strange, peaceful sadness. She wasn't in love with Noah. She knew that. What she missed was the version of herself that once felt alive, curious, full of light. Noah had simply reminded her that woman still existed, quiet, hidden, waiting for her to return. As she closed her eyes, Daniel turned in his sleep and murmured something unintelligible. She brushed a hand against his shoulder gently. She still loved him, but she also knew love alone wasn't always enough. Sometimes you had to rediscover the pieces of yourself you left behind, and maybe tomorrow. By the lake, she would start finding them again. The morning sky was pale blue when Emma woke up. The air smelled fresh after the night's rain, and sunlight spilled gently through the curtains. Daniel was already up, humming softly as he packed snacks and fishing gear. His energy reminded her of their younger years, when weekends were filled with spontaneous trips and shared laughter. It had been so long since she'd seen that spark in him. Maybe the lake trip wasn't such a bad idea after all. By mid-morning, they were on the road. The hum of the car engine blended with Daniel's upbeat conversation as he told old stories, occasionally laughing at his own jokes. Emma sat in the passenger seat, gazing out the window at the tall evergreens sliding by. Noah sat in the back seat, quiet but content, looking out at the passing scenery. There was something peaceful about his silence. He didn't need to fill every pause with words. It was one of the things she had always admired about him. After a while, the car grew quiet. Daniel turned on some soft music, and Emma found herself lost in thought. The road curved around the forest before opening up to a wide, glimmering lake. The water sparkled under the sunlight, calm and endless. For a moment, she felt something loosen in her chest, like she could breathe again. They parked near a wooden pier. Daniel got out first, full of energy, grabbing the fishing rods and cooler. "Come on," he said, grinning. "The best spot is still down by the rocks." Emma smiled faintly and followed, her sandals brushing against the damp grass. Noah walked beside her, his hands in his pockets. The breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh water, the kind of smell that makes memories surface. The lake was beautiful. The surface shimmered like glass, broken only by the ripples of Daniel's fishing line. Emma sat down on a large rock, letting her toes touch the cool water. Noah joined her quietly. For a while, they didn't speak. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was calm, natural, like they were two people who didn't need to explain their thoughts to be understood. "You always liked quiet places," Noah said finally. She nodded. "I think I just forgot how much." He looked at her profile, the sunlight tracing her hair. "You seem lighter today," he said softly. She gave a small smile. "Maybe it's the air. Or maybe it's because I'm away from everything for a while." Daniel called out from a distance, waving proudly as he caught a fish. His laughter echoed across the water, full and carefree. Emma waved back, smiling genuinely for the first time in a while. When Daniel turned his attention back to the water, Noah said, "He seems happy." "He is," Emma replied. "He just forgets to slow down sometimes." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "You both changed a lot. But that's life, I guess. We grow, we drift, and sometimes we circle back." His words stayed in her mind long after. They walked along the edge of the lake, following a small trail lined with wildflowers. The sunlight danced through the trees, and for the first time in years, Emma felt present, not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, just here. Now, they stopped near a large tree where the view stretched endlessly. Noah picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. It danced 3 times before sinking. "Still got it," he said, laughing dots. Emma smiled. "You never lost it." He handed her a smaller stone. "Your turn." She threw it, but it sank immediately. They both laughed. "Guess I lost it," she said. "No," he replied. "You just stopped trying." The words hit her deeper than he meant them to. She looked out at the water, her smile fading. "I stopped trying a lot of things," she said quietly. He didn't respond right away. "Then maybe it's time to start again," he said finally. They stood there for a while, just watching the gentle ripples. She didn't know if it was the lake, the breeze, or Noah's calm presence. But something inside her began to shift. It wasn't about him. It was about herself. About remembering the woman she once was before life turned into a long list of responsibilities. When they returned to the pier, Daniel was setting up lunch. He looked up and smiled at her. "You look happy," he said. "See? I told you this trip was a good idea." She smiled back. "You were right." They ate together, the 3 of them sharing sandwiches and old stories. For a few hours, it felt simple, no tension, no unspoken words. Just sunshine, laughter, and the soft hum of the lake. Later, Daniel decided to take the boat out for one last fishing run before heading home. "You two relax," he said, waving as he drifted away. As his boat moved across the lake, the world seemed to quiet again. Emma sat on the pier, dipping her feet into the water. Noah joined her, sitting close, but not too close. "The water's colder than I expected," she said. He smiled. "Sometimes the most peaceful places surprise you." She looked at him then, really looked at him. He had the same calm expression he'd always had, but there was something wiser in his eyes. A kindness that came from years of understanding. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she said suddenly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Noah didn't look surprised. "You're still you, Emma. You just stopped listening to your heart for a while." She sighed. "It's not that simple." He smiled faintly. "Maybe it is." The sun began to set, painting the lake in shades of pink and gold. For a long time, they sat there in silence. She thought about her life, her marriage, her choices, her forgotten dreams. And slowly she realized something important. She didn't need anyone to rescue her. She just needed to wake up to her own life again. When Daniel returned, the sky was already dim. "You two didn't get bored without me," he joked. Emma shook her head. "Not at all. It was peaceful," he grinned. "Good. Let's head back before it gets dark." On the drive home, Emma watched the sunset fade behind the trees. She felt both heavy and light, like something inside her had shifted quietly, without fanfare. Daniel talked about work and plans for next weekend, but her mind was somewhere deeper, processing everything she had felt that day. When they reached home, she helped Daniel unpack, then went out to the porch. The night air was cool, the stars faint but visible. She sat there for a long time, listening to the crickets and the faint hum of the city in the distance. A few minutes later, Noah stepped outside too, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one. "Couldn't sleep either?" She shook her head. "Too many thoughts." He smiled gently. "Good thoughts, I hope." She looked out at the dark horizon. "Real ones?" she said softly. They sat side by side, saying nothing. Their shoulders brushed lightly, just a simple human closeness. There was no tension, no unspoken desire, only quiet understanding. She didn't feel conflicted. She felt seen. When Noah finally stood to leave, he said, "Don't lose this peace, Emma. You deserve to feel alive." She looked up at him, her eyes calm. "Thank you, Noah, for reminding me." He nodded and went back inside. Emma stayed on the porch a little longer, the night air cool against her skin. For the first time in years, she felt awake, not because of anyone else, but because she remembered herself. The lake had done something no one else could. It reflected not who she was with, but who she truly was. And deep down, she knew tomorrow would not be the same. The next morning arrived calm and golden. Sunlight spilled softly through the windows, painting the wooden floor in pale light. Emma woke to the sound of birds outside and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. For the first time in a long while, she felt rested. The lake trip had left her quiet but full, like something inside her had been set free. When she walked into the kitchen, Daniel was already dressed for the day, standing by the counter with 2 mugs in his hands. He looked at her and smiled. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep in," she replied, taking the cup he offered. "It's too beautiful a morning to waste." He studied her for a moment. "You've seemed different," he said softly. "Different? How?" she asked, curious. "Lighter," he said simply. "Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down." She smiled faintly, glancing out the window. "Maybe I have." The world outside looked peaceful, the trees, the sunlight, the faint trace of mist rising from the grass. Everything felt new. A few minutes later, Noah came downstairs, his bag slung over his shoulder. He was leaving that morning. The sight of him standing there, calm, kind, ready to go, stirred a quiet sadness in Emma. She didn't want to admit it. But the thought of him leaving left a small hollow inside her. Daniel clapped him on the back. "It's been good having you here, man. Feels like old times." "Really does," Noah said with a smile. "Thanks for having me." Emma poured him a cup of coffee. Their eyes met briefly, a simple, wordless exchange. Gratitude, understanding, something neither of them needed to explain. After breakfast, Daniel offered to drive Noah to the station. But Noah shook his head. "No, it's fine. I've got a cab coming. You two should enjoy the rest of your morning." Daniel nodded, heading upstairs to grab something he'd forgotten. That left Emma and Noah alone in the quiet kitchen. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock filled the space between them. Then Noah broke the silence. "You started sketching again," he said, nodding toward the open notebook on the table. She smiled softly. "Just something I did last night. I couldn't sleep." He looked at the page, a sketch of the lake at sunset, the sky melting into gold and rose. "It's beautiful," he said. "You haven't lost your touch." Emma laughed lightly. "I was afraid I had. You just needed to remember," he said gently. "Sometimes life buries the things that make us feel alive. You just have to dig them out again." She looked at him, realizing how much those words meant. "You reminded me," she said quietly. "Not just of painting, but of who I was before everything got complicated." He nodded. "You did that yourself. I just held up a mirror." The cab honked outside, breaking the silence. Noah turned toward the door, then back at her. "Take care of yourself, Emma. Don't go back to forgetting." She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Noah, for everything." He smiled, and for a moment time seemed to slow, not in longing, but in gratitude. Then he was gone, the sound of the door closing echoing softly in the quiet house. Emma stood there for a while, staring at the empty doorway. There was no ache of forbidden love, no guilt, only peace. The kind that comes when something inside you has finally settled. When Daniel came back downstairs, she was sitting by the window, sketchbook in her lap. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You really seem happier today," he said. "Did something happen?" She looked up at him, her smile warm and sincere. "I just remembered who I am," she said simply. He frowned slightly, confused but intrigued. "And who's that?" "A woman who loves deeply," she said. "A woman who used to dream. A woman who's still learning how to start again." Daniel sat beside her, taking her hand gently. "I know I haven't been here the way I should," he admitted. "Work took over and I stopped seeing what matters." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the tiredness in his eyes. The years of trying and failing, of caring but losing sight of how. For the first time, she didn't feel anger. She felt understanding. "We both forgot," she said softly. "But maybe we can remember together." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. "I'd like that." The day passed quietly. Emma spent the afternoon painting by the window, soft music playing in the background. Daniel worked nearby, occasionally glancing at her with a smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The kind of small, quiet beginning that meant something. As the sun dipped low, she stepped outside with her canvas. The air was cool, and the light turned everything golden. The painting she'd been working on showed the lake, still and wide, the reflection of the sky dancing on the surface. But in the distance, she had added two figures, small, standing side by side, looking out at the water. Daniel joined her on the porch. "That's beautiful," he said softly. "Is that us?" She nodded. "It's who I hope we can be again." He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "We can be," he said. "If we try." She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "Then let's start now." They stood there in silence, watching the last light fade over the horizon. Emma felt something quiet and powerful bloom inside her. Not excitement, not passion, but peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop running from yourself later that night. After Daniel had gone to bed, she stayed awake, cleaning her brushes. The smell of paint filled the air, familiar and comforting. She thought of Noah not with longing, but gratitude. He had come into her life like a passing storm, washing away the dust that had settled on her dreams. He hadn't changed her marriage. He hadn't stolen her heart. He had simply helped her find it again. When she finally went to bed, Daniel stirred and opened his eyes. "You're still awake?" He murmured sleepily. "Just thinking," she said softly. "About what?" "About second chances," she whispered. He smiled drowsily, reaching for her hand. "Then let's take one." Emma lay there in the dark, holding his hand, feeling the quiet rhythm of their breaths sink again. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel trapped or lost. She felt present, whole. Outside, the rain began to fall again, softly tapping against the windows. But this time, it didn't sound lonely. It sounded alive, like the world itself was breathing with her Dot. Emma closed her eyes, a gentle smile on her lips. Life wasn't perfect, and neither was love. But she had learned something deeper. Love wasn't about holding on tightly. It was about growing, forgiving, and rediscovering the beauty that time often hides. And though Noah was gone, his kindness lingered like sunlight after rain, a reminder that sometimes a single encounter can awaken everything you thought you'd lost. As dawn slowly crept into the sky, Emma whispered to herself, "I'm home again."